Let's talk about Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. That's right. No more excuses. Get your lazy ass off the couch. Go start a podcast. There's the creation tool that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Once again, no more excuses. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. Couldn't be easier. Even better, you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. That's right, they're paying us for this ad. Thank you very much, Anchor. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started now.
This is The Dime, a 10-minute dive into the cannabis and hemp industry through trends, insights, predictions, and tangents.
Is that even possible, Evan?
Absolutely. In the pharma space, you can look at a line that's making tablets for people to take, very similar to how you'd look at this gummy bear manufacturing line, where the materials are either being pressed or whatever. The way in pharma it's done is, or traditionally done, they would steal some of those gummy bears coming off the line and send them to the lab to analyze. And it would take days. And, what would they find out? If they found one out of the 20 gummy bears they pulled had too much or too little outside of there, well, what are you going to do? That batch is already made and the bears are mixed together. How are you going to pick them out? You can't unscramble an egg. But what could be done is at that point where the material is being poured into the molds, before the nozzle that actually distributes it, you can install an optical sensor, and we would use a known quantity of a known spectrum of light. We'd shine it through the material, and we would detect how much of that light is left after it goes through the material. And whatever is missing has been absorbed by the chemistry inside the material. Different chemistries absorb different wavelengths of light, and we can look at the pattern of what we get back compared to what we sent and determine how much of the various elements of interest are in the sample. In this case, it would be THC or CBD, and we'd want to make sure that the number is steady as it flows past the sample, at which point we'd know that it's generally homogeneous.
I think that's a great breakdown, and I think it's funny, right? The batch loss and when an organization loses a batch, then it looks to implement these sensors where Kellan and I scream from the rooftop, put the instrumentation in place prior, because if you lose the batch, that's a lost sunk cost, and then you have to invest in the instrumentation, an additional cost. So now you're out how much versus if you just instituted the sensors beforehand, you've got yourself monitoring the process, saving your batch, and probably saving resources, costs.
Right. You haven't even accounted for the amount of time you've lost going through, I'm going to set up, I'm going to make a bunch of stuff, I'm going to make 3 good batches, and then I'm going to have a terrible one. And now I have to go and figure out what I'm doing to ameliorate that situation. You've lost a year, like a whole year, probably.
And probably tons of capital.
Yeah.
And it's you've seen this with all the other industries that you're implementing these sensors in, and it's only a matter of time before cannabis is like, I can understand what's going on in real time. I can make these adjustments. I can make sure that my product is within acceptable quality standards that we adhere to.
Absolutely. I think cannabis is actually a really well-positioned market to take on this technology into its landscape, run with it, and do phenomenally, because the cannabis industry has this sort of like Silicon Valley tech feel to it in a lot of ways. The way it attracts money and drives sort of non-traditional business models although there's plenty of traditional business models too. And I think that a hot application or a series of hot applications based on good high technology could really fit very nicely into the cannabis industry really quickly. And within 5 to 10 years, we could see one of the most efficient chemical manufacturing operations in the world.
The one challenge I wonder if people will hear this and then believe, who needs to be running this piece of instrument? How can we implement it? Do we need to have a scientist on site in order to handle this? What's the best path in order to kind of integrate this into our process?
So I will start by saying, shameless plug alert. You do not need a scientist on staff. We at Hellma can bring our scientific expertise and do the development needed to implement these sensors into a wide variety of processes in the cannabis, in the hemp space, in the further down the value chain, in formulation of final product, in so everywhere from extraction to the end. And we can build up the application for you. You don't need the scientist on hand. The equipment, once in place, is simple enough to operate, and the insights can be gleaned from that.
Can you share some insight on return on investments you've seen from other industries?
In industries where they have to do HPLC-based QA/QC throughout a manufacturing process, including certification at the end, it typically takes about a year to start showing profit on your investments. And that's calculated by looking at the cost of the consumables you use in the HPLC testing over that time, and the cost of the laboratory staff and their continuing education and all the other costs that go into that. And the idea is these are otherwise highly trained individuals, and they're doing the same test over and over and over again for you. They could be doing more research and developing next generation products and ideas, but instead they're doing rote tasks that don't even need to be done offline, that can be done continuously and leveraged into big data insights and control schemes.
That's really interesting. So let's hop into the prediction time. When do we expect to see sensors, for the first guess, in process in the cannabis industry? How quickly?
Well, I'd say that there's at least one out there already. And there have been some other companies that have tried and left the space. But sensors from our group we can launch with off-the-shelf product that we have to develop with you right away, or we can custom tailor a solution to a specific application, and that development cycle is probably 9 to 18 months. So I'd say, by 2023, we should start seeing growing adoption in the space.
To be continued.